Assalamu alaikum and welcome to today's episode of the AhmedBassalPodcast. My very special guest today is Mr. Peter Gould. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you?
Salam. Doing great. Alhamdulillah. Good to see you.
How's everything, man?
Alhamdulillah. Pretty amazing. Yeah, I'm really happy you're here, man. Really looking forward to our chat.
and I should mention that we're not in our usual studio. We're in Gould's studio today. So we've been invited as VIPs, one of the coolest studios right by the beach. We've got some great coffee on the way. So thank you so much for hosting us as well.
Man, thanks for coming up. Been looking forward to our chat and welcome.
Thank you so much. First things first, I got you a small gift. It's actually from Mecca. So you can open it up and tell us what you think.
Wow, okay. This it's beautifully packaged. I was eyeing this off a little earlier. So thank you very much, firstly.
You're welcome. You might have to sit back for the mic.
Okay. All right.
This
looks pretty cool.
So I would just like to get your opinion.
Wow, okay. This looks a bit fancy. Thank you. Oh, man, okay. Oh, man, I have to say I appreciate a nice oud.
All right.
Should I open it live?
Please, yeah.
Oud noir as well.
Now, don't worry, I'm not selling these, so this is not some kind of weird advertisement.
Wow, man.
I actually got this in Mecca a couple of years ago, and I liked it so much I bought 4 or 5 bottles. And this is
Can I put on for you?
Those
Would you like some?
It's the Acclaim. Never say no.
And I'm looking forward to this.
It's one of those ones that once it settles, it's just... Tell me what you think.
Oh, alhamdulillah. What a nice way to start the episode. Now I'm in my zone. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Look, one of my favorite creative people in the world is Horacio Pagani. He makes supercars.
Yeah, right.
Argentinian guy.
Yep. Like they're the famous supercar, the hypercars, Paganis. Yeah, okay.
So he's that guy.
Yes.
And he's cool. I'm a bit of a car nut. He's a bit of a Leonardo da Vinci of design and aesthetics and stuff.
Extraordinary designs. Yeah.
I watched a documentary on him, not on the cars, but on him. Because he's not an engineer. So most car designers, they're engineers. They're coming at it from a technical perspective, like Porsche, the Porsche family. But Horacio Pagani, he's so meticulous in the kind of atmosphere and mood that he wants to create that before he has a meeting with someone, he's got all these scents. In matching little bottles in his desk drawer.
Nice.
And he'll think about what kind of mood he wants to create for the upcoming meeting, whether it's a price negotiation, whether it's a style thing, whether it's a customer. And he'll spray the right scent in the room to create a feeling that he wants to be conducive to the conversation. But weird scents, not like colognes and perfumes, like the smell of freshly cut grass.
Yeah,
he'll spray that in the room, and then he'll have people. So
whatever he's doing, it works because there's some extraordinary designs from those cars. I mean, they're radically powerful. But you know what this reminded me of when you gifted it to me is so one of my teachers who passed away, Allah yarhamu, taught me about oud, and he taught me the kind of the art of oud. That was one of his great loves in life, and burning oud, the kind of the different origins and a little bit of the kind of adab around preparing oud, particularly the wood, burning it and, Kambudi oud and different kind of styles. So I can't say I've ever, got to the level of the real craft of being able to prepare it, but you brought me to that place and made me think of my teacher. So alhamdulillah.
See, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that existed. So there's oud masters out there in the world.
Well, it's there is, and there's a long history of it and the trade. But a lot of the best oud comes from Southeast Asia, so Cambodia, for example, and then. But you'll find it. Let's say you're in Dubai, you walk past the mall, and you'll kind of you'll see these beautiful bukhar kind of burning, but. My understanding is that a lot of the traditional way that's gathered and prepared, and there's certain kind of trees that it grows on. It's actually like a type of fungus that grows on only certain trees.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then it's distilled, and some of the sort of very sought after types of this oud, certain breeds or chips or whatever, they're very valuable. So that's why you can go and maybe somewhere in Saudi or Dubai and find one little kind of piece of oud that's like $25,000 or something.
Mashallah.
But it also I had learned about the traditional understanding of it in the use. Some scholars would kind of really, kind of really invite dissent as they almost got like a bit of an elevated lift as they were to write or work on. Like, this is what he shared with me, like Hamu. His name was, his name was Asama Cannon. Yeah, I used to.
Yeah, I'd never met him, but I knew of him. And I knew he got sick and he passed away a couple of years ago.
That's right. Yeah.
Did he lose his ability to speak by the end?
Yeah, I wasn't able to see him in the last probably year, but before that I was able to see him briefly, and he had a great influence on a lot of people, and you just brought back that happy memory for me, so thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Before we go any further, I'm going to open these coffees up.
Yeah, let's do it. Coffee and oud, this is a great way to start friendship in a podcast. Thank you. Bismillah.
So, Peter Gould, your name is pretty much synonymous with creativity in general. But just for those who don't know, what is it that you do? Gould Studio, the Gould organization, the Gould ecosystem. What's all that about?
Yeah, what's all that about? So I kind of describe it as these two paths in my life that have kind of come together. And so one is the path of design and being a creative professional, which is helping maybe people develop their ideas and brands and projects, or sometimes launch my own, and having a design team and different products around that. But the other path is my spiritual journey and becoming Muslim, exploring Islam.
Oh, you're Muslim? No kidding.
Reveal. And for about 20 years now. And Gould Studio and the kind of work I do with my team and the kind of things I've worked on and I love to work on are really at the heart of these two things together. So kind of the spiritual path and looking at the traditional understanding of Islamic design, but then contemporary practice of design. So that might be apps or digital products. Right. And so Gould Studio and what I do is really kind of those two things together, and that takes different shapes and forms, and over the last 20 years there's been different kind of variations of that.
Alhamdulillah. And you've got 4 offices now all over the world.
Yes, look, alhamdulillah, the team is COVID kind of changed things, so there are locations, but the team's pretty much mostly remote, and they're kind of they're there, but I mean this Sydney studio here now, it's not like it's full every day before COVID. People come, but everything's very online and remote these days.
Cool. And you guys are busy, I assume, because you, mashallah, have been involved in lots of things. I know you worked with Google, you worked with Apple. You won an award from the Vice President of the UAE. So
I feel like what else have you discovered in deep searching and all these things?
Oh, I know everything about you.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it's been a big blessing. It's been a big journey. And alhamdulillah, yeah, it's been a wonderful couple of years.
Alhamdulillah.
And I think part of what we all have to do is learn, adapt, grow, be agile. Look for what are new developing technologies or opportunities, challenges that come along, and particularly if you're in the design kind of space, it's embracing those and looking at some of these challenges as opportunities or potential. So we could do a long tangent on AI, for example, and
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. And it's being curious about those things and creatively confident, but I think spiritually grounded in how you might approach any of these things.
Creatively confident and spiritually grounded. I really like that. In episode 1 of our show, I interviewed a lovely brother. His name's Makeen Hawrani. He's doing some great things at One Path Network, and we're basically 2 film geeks just geeking out about films for an hour and a half.
I know this guy. He's a good guy, mashallah.
He's a good guy, mashallah. And we're both really advocates, you could say, of encouraging more young Muslim people to get into the creative fields.
Yeah.
For me personally, actually, when I was young, I had a thing for design, and I started charging people to make business cards for them and things like that. But there was always a lot of pressure in my family, being Egyptian, to do medicine or engineering or whatever, and eventually I got a business degree. But I think if things were different, I would have probably gone down the creative route. Definitely the filmmaking route, if there was an avenue to do that. Back in 1998.
You're still young, Ahmed. Don't worry.
Alhamdulillah. We're making something right now, so we're getting on the bandwagon a bit late. But alhamdulillah, I'm so glad to have the opportunity to have a chat to you, because I think the more Muslim young people who are still in that, late teens, early 20s, even late 20s, who haven't really figured out what their passion is, for them to think about and explore the creative arenas. I think it's going to be great for the Ummah, inshallah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also necessary. It's, one of the observations, alhamdulillah, I've been fortunate over the last 20 years to, I guess, live in different places, San Francisco and Dubai, but mostly Sydney, mostly Australia. But just see and recognize in different pockets, whether it's in, Indonesia or Istanbul, recognize there is this with younger generation, especially looking at the technology they've got access to, the tools, but also just the sense of like a lot of things are broken, a lot of things we need to fix. How do we, and watching younger entrepreneurs and aspiring Muslim creatives is one of my favorite things to do, is support those people. And I've been trying to develop programs and projects and content that supports people that want to make that difference. How do we guide them through or connect them with other communities or mentors, advisors? And there's been some great success stories come through, some great
100%,
startups.
100%, yeah. So there was a phase probably within the last 5 years, I think maybe COVID contributed to it, where it seemed like every other week there was some 15-year-old somewhere in the world that invented something, or some 14-year-old somewhere in the world that solved this problem that scientists have been trying to solve for a long time. And it's just because they had the like you said, they have the resources available that they can Google anything, they can watch how-to videos, they can read scientific papers, and they can just do whatever they want to do. So I think guiding them is very important, like you said, but also just unleashing them, and just letting them run with whatever they want to run with.
I think doing that, but one of the sort of challenges that I had personally faced, but then also recognize in different emerging young leaders, is finding the right content from these two paths that I kind of mentioned, where we might alhamdulillah have access to great scholars and teachers and a lot of online guidance that we can learn and level up our knowledge, but on the other hand, if we looked at a lot of the might call kind of entrepreneurial literature, business podcasts, books, they're the most popular ones are kind of a separate. They don't really necessarily have a faith base or spiritually grounded conversation.
Yeah, true.
Some of the more mainstream publications, all of those, they intentionally don't like to really go there. Okay, maybe the odd Rumi quote if you're lucky, and where I think there's a tremendous potential, and what gets me excited is looking more directly, how do we take these traditional wisdoms and spiritual teachings and Islamic concepts, but apply them to our entrepreneurial aspirations,
right?
And how do we kind of empower people who want to, launch a product, build a startup, help the community, and not kind of see these as two separate activities? How do we directly bring them together?
Like your friend Muhammad Faris.
Yeah, great example, mashallah.
Great example, the productive Muslim. I know, I think I met him once or twice, I think, when he came to Sydney.
Yeah.
He was doing productive Muslim just as sort of hints and tips, and it was just sort of a casual thing, and then now it's become a whole ecosystem of books and products and tools, and he's giving talks. So that's a great example of Islamic principles, not in a under the table, on the side kind of way, but in a really overt way. It's like, hey, these are Islamic principles on how to work hard, how to be productive, how to get the most out of your time, and so on. It is.
He's a very good friend of mine. We chat almost daily, and we alhamdulillah, we're at similar seasons of life with the age of some of our businesses, and also our kids and the things that we share. And I've learned a lot from him. He's a very dear friend and mentor, and it's been nice to know him from that earliest time when he just was starting his blog to now, exactly as you said, the reach and the impact. But he's one of the most sincere people, mashallah. But what I think is really relevant to a lot of us, maybe people listening to the podcast, whether you're thinking about entrepreneurship or not, or whether you're kind of thinking in any kind of creative aspiration or not, a book like The Productive Muslim and his new one that's about to come out, The Barakah Effect, I hope I'm allowed to share that. I think he's really understood and codified what he calls barakah culture versus hustle culture.
Right.
So hustle culture is kind of what I was just getting at, where it's like, we're going to crush it every day, we're going to destroy the competition, we're going to grow,
I've seen stuff about this, yeah.
Exactly, but he's more like, no, be like the gardener. Don't be like the boxer, right? Plant your seeds, have good intentions, work hard, and over time there's abundance and barakah in your work. And he has really good content that's, he shares beautifully through those programs that help us, how do we unlock that mindset, the barakah mindset, rather than sort of the the hustle. So that's cool. And he's coming to, inshallah, he's coming to Sydney soon.
It sounds really fascinating. You reminded me of a friend of mine, because we run an organization called Intro to Islam, and we do classes for non-Muslims who want to learn about Islam, as well as a lot of them that eventually, alhamdulillah, say their shahada. Then we teach them how to pray and how to fast and so on. Yeah. It's all structured with a set curriculum and PowerPoints and all the rest of it. Right. So I had brought some friends into this ecosystem, and one of them noticed, they said, I really love the culture that you have in Intro to Islam. And I said, what do you mean? I don't understand. He said, well, I don't really know how to describe it. It's the way you welcome new people into the class, the way you welcome new people into the WhatsApp group. And we sort of just discussed it casually for a few months, and he said, I think I would call it the Rahma culture.
Yeah, okay, nice.
And I said, wow, just the name sounds awesome. Yeah. And we eventually put our heads together to try to capture and articulate what it is that made the culture within Intro to Islam so welcoming, so warm, so friendly, and it just, it pulled people in. Yeah. We hope that it's something similar to how the Prophet Muhammad and the companions would have welcomed new Muslims into the fold of Islam. Because often, you might know this from your own journey to Islam, that sometimes new Muslims or reverts, they feel like second-class citizens almost in the Muslim community. But he said that this Rahma culture that you have, I want to understand what makes it tick. Yeah. And then I want to be able to copy and paste it in any other organization. So we actually spent a year researching and writing a manual on how to roll out the Rahma culture in your organization.
That's great. That's
so who knows? You might see that in the future. I wanted to ask you though, your own journey to Islam. Yeah. I'm sure you've told the story a million times. I haven't heard it though. I would love if you could tell us who you were before Islam. Yeah. How you came to Islam.
Yeah, mashallah. No, I'll be very happy to share. So alhamdulillah, I grew up here in Sydney, in Australia. In my, I had. I guess what you call a very, suburban middle class kind of upbringing, and but no real exposure to religion specifically. My parents are not from any particular.
So not religious family.
No, not religious. But I went to church a few times and did plenty of Christmas carols and stuff like that. Right. And I kind of.
Were you a choir boy at any stage?
No, it didn't go there. No, I joke a little bit about it, rightly or wrongly, but my kind of concept of God was really from pop culture. So, TV, The Simpsons, a bit of that angry old man. And it felt, religion and anything related to God, even the word, it felt very archaic and very kind of dated and not something relevant to the modern world. And I think that's still kind of the feeling that a lot of people might have, depending on I'll come back to this, but language is very important. So the word has a certain association for a lot of people. Right. But when I started encountering Islam, which was through a Muslim family that I actually came to know, not far from where I was living, was there's kind of, I think of this journey in two sort of phases. One is that it's a gradual awareness or an awakening that there's a lot more to this life than our atoms and our chemical makeup, that there is a much deeper metaphysical kind of reality to how the universe works, how, what is our relationship to the natural world and other people, and that there's kind of this journey that I think a lot of people go through at a certain age, where you start to appreciate the signs that there is much more going on around us. And alhamdulillah, I kind of in my late teens started to experience that and have I guess more of a consciousness around that there's a broader, there's something bigger. But I didn't know exactly how to define that or how to label it and describe it.
Did you associate those feelings at the time with God, or you just associated those feelings with spirituality, metaphysics?
Yeah, I think it's more broadly. I hadn't particularly. I still had strong. I think resistance to any idea of organized religion, right? Which is the standard joke is like, well, Islam is not an organized religion. Yeah. It's very, but I started to have this sense that there's something more going on. I need to explore it, and it was really alhamdulillah through this Muslim family and challenging some of my assumptions. Like, hang on, here's a family that are they're very successful, they're intelligent, they're in their careers and in their life, but they're mashallah, a very beautiful family, but they're practicing a faith and they believe in God and they pray. And I was like, I didn't even think these two things really go together. That someone that intelligent and insightful would kind of take on something that I considered very kind of asynchronistic.
So you thought at the time people who were religious were sort of blindly following without thinking, but here was a family that was obviously full of thinkers and educated people and could have a great conversation, but they were adhering to their faith, and you were like...
And it wasn't just in a kind of cultural way. It's like, we grew up like this and our parents did it and it's our community and our tradition. It was like a real sincerity that you could detect. And that sincerity resulted in what I'd now kind of describe as a sakina, right? You see there's a certain inner kind of tranquility that, and we feel that as, as Muslims or people of faith, we've had the opportunity to experience that sweetness of iman, we might call it. And it was this gradual journey then of asking questions, visiting. I went to a number of different kind of lectures, but approaching things with this sort of a genuine kind of hesitancy.
Right.
But I think of it now as, if people kind of ask me about that period, as well, it's really it's borrowing from Imam al-Ghazali. You can talk about honey all day. You can describe honey. You can categorize it. You can have all its scientific properties and read a whole book about honey. But it's not really until you taste that honey that you really understand it, and it's experiential. So
you're the second person to mention that analogy to me this month.
Yeah, well,
and it's such a clever way to put it. No matter how much you read about honey, or it's until you taste it, that's when you really know what's going on.
Yeah, it's a very timeless one, and it's helpful because I also think that in my journey into faith was both one of your aql, where you have to look at the theology and say, well, this is actually very simple. The relationship with God, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is actually theologically it's easy to kind of understand. There's not these layers of complexity. There's nuance that you learn later, and you learn things like the 99 names, different attributes that you give you a rich understanding of that. But I realized that there was, and even the prophetic examples are there for all time. Fundamentally, as humans, we have the same kinds of issues throughout the centuries. And to sort of borrow again from a well-known anecdote is, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And as soon as you start sort of leaning into that journey, if anyone's kind of honest and you try to, I think, remove the stigmas and remove the kind of the costumes, if you like, of the prejudice or stigma that you might have seen in headlines or certain associations. An honest journey into Islam, I think, for people that I've seen many times and people that I've met, is a beautiful one. So I was fortunate to go through that over a couple of years.
Alhamdulillah. And was there a point, so you met this family, you were kind of surprised with two qualities appearing together in one family that you didn't really think could go together, and so you started to think about things differently. Was there a point where you read something or heard something or felt something, and that was this thing where you were like, okay, wow, there's got to be something to this? Whether that was the moment you were convinced that Islam was the truth or just the moment that really got your attention, was there something like that for you?
I think there are a series of those, but it's not like there's not some big dramatic revealing. It's a slow, I think, awakening of consciousness around something much, a real metaphysical layer to our existence, and then a combination of things. But I think one of the specific things was I tried fasting. Ramadan had come along, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a try. The Muslims that I'm around, and by this time I'd met a few different pockets, and I was visiting different places and being curious. And I tried fasting, and I found that
try before you buy.
Yeah, totally. And it was again, you kind of you see some wisdoms in that. And actually, it was then it got towards the end of that Ramadan. This is 2002, and it actually came to the 27th night, and I didn't really know the significance of that at the time, but that's when I actually said my shahada. It was on the 27th
Subhanallah.
night.
I was just going to ask you if you said your shahada in Ramadan.
Yeah.
You know, we've noticed something about Ramadan, and really only any person or any organization that consistently does da'wah to non-Muslims, they might have noticed this, but it's something a lot of people don't know. We usually speak to people about Islam through these weekly classes, and obviously we encourage people to say the Shahada if we feel that they're ready.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are not ready, sometimes there's some hesitation or fear or resistance, which is normal.
Yeah.
Our job is to try to help them overcome that, maybe not today, but maybe next week, maybe the week after.
Yeah.
Once we had a dinner in Adelaide, where I'm from. There was one guy who I went to high school with, who after 15 years apart, we had been reconnected again. And in high school, this guy dressed like Marilyn Manson. He was, I won't say his name because he's probably watching, but he was, you know, the black eyeshadow, the black fingernails, the torn clothes, and all the rest of it. This in high school, he lovely guy, but that's just the way he was, and that, you know, for better or for worse. After 15 years, I bumped into him. He was a normal-looking guy. He started coming to Intro to Islam classes, and once we had a dinner, and my teacher, my mentor, my sheikh in the Dawah sphere had come along to this dinner. So in my mind, here's the big guns coming to the dinner, and so I said, "Hey, I think this guy's close. Can you talk to him? Can you try to get him over the line?" He said, okay. My teacher sat down with this guy for an hour, coming from all different angles to try to get him to say the Shahada without making him feel pressured. And he kept saying, look, everything you're saying is great. You know, I really agree with everything you're saying. I just don't think I'm ready. And so this was about a week before Ramadan. Then Ramadan started, and one night we called him and said, hey, we're all going to the mosque. Why don't you come with us? He came along to the mosque. We prayed Taraweeh, and he just watched from the back of the mosque. We went and sat outside to drink tea after Taraweeh. I just looked at him and said, you know, why don't you just become Muslim? And he just kind of looked up at the night sky and he said, yeah, okay. And he said his Shahada on the spot. My teacher was there in both instances, and the look on his face was just priceless. Like, I spoke to this guy for an hour, and I said all these arguments and made so much sense, and he wouldn't do it. And in Ramadan, it was just like that. And so really, it's exactly true. You know, the devils are chained up. In Ramadan, the gates of Jannah are open, the gates of hellfire are shut. It was so easy for people to say Shahada during. My own wife, about 20 years ago, said Shahada in Ramadan as well.
Is that right?
So when there's no resistance, there's no whispering from shaitan, it's very easy. So incredible story, alhamdulillah. And so 20 years later, today's episode of the Ahmed Bassal Podcast was hosted by the wonderful Gould Studio. Peter has been an amazing host, and he's shown us all around his beautiful premises, lots of different cool projects that are going on. And as I said, he's got 4 offices in 4 different locations. So if you need anything to do with creativity, design, user interfaces, even just a new way of thinking about what you want to solve, hit up Gould Studio, and Peter will take good care of you.
Yeah. A few more grey hairs.
I don't see any grey hairs. I think you should grow your hair out. Though. I like the long-haired Peter Gould. You know.
Yeah, people say like, I like your old stuff, but they do stuff. Yeah, so I get alhamdulillah. It's been, thank you. So you know, alhamdulillah, it's been a beautiful journey, and you know, different seasons of life, and alhamdulillah, I have my 3 kids now, and 2 teenagers, and it's
2
been
2 teenagers. Yeah, I've got 1 teenager, and I want to stop the growth of the other 2 before they get to the teenage years.
Well, that's not how it goes.
Alhamdulillah.
But, so it's been a big blessing, and every moment is learning, and there's there's this wisdoms that you never appreciate for maybe until later, and certain concepts that have really helped me on this spiritual path. For example, rida, this idea of this kind of contentment or acceptance of things, and I think this has been valuable right from that earliest time, you know, because there was also difficulty as well around that time. And you got to remember, if the year's 2002, you know, what happened the year before was challenging for a lot of communities and, you know, Muslim identities. You know, there's already 10 billion podcasts about that. But, you know, I've kind of found myself becoming Muslim at an interesting time for a lot of communities. So, but this idea of rida is really being a guiding, I think, concept in terms of, I asked one of my teachers about this word, and he said, well, Peter, it's like accepting all decisions that were made in the past and all decisions that will be made in the future with this kind of gratitude, acceptance, surrender. I was like, subhanAllah, like that's a if you can get to that state. So I think at every stage in different seasons of life, it's looking. We've got in our tradition these timeless spiritual concepts and aspirations, like your niyyah, something simple as your intentionality, or doing things with ikhlas, sincerity, or looking at the gifts and opportunities you have. It's an amana, it's a blessing that you've been trusted with. What are you doing with your time? So these are the concepts that then as I was learning over the years from different teachers and experiences, and then trying to apply that into the creative work, trying to think about, well, what does niyyah mean when you're going to design a product?
Because that was going to be my next question.
Right,
How do you see those ideas affecting what you do every day?
Yeah. Well, I think these are pretty timeless ideas that people on the spiritual path have, and in different traditions. These are universal ideas, but my own kind of journey through that and through Islam has been trying to understand these words and concepts. And just going back even a little to my own journey into Islam, is that one of the big challenges of the era, I think, especially somewhere like Australia, is what I might call our spiritual vocabulary. So if you say the word God to someone, or Jesus, or peace be upon him, or even the Quran or Bible, like, people, whether they think it or not, have thousands of predefined,
comes with all this baggage,
a lot of baggage, and that's understandable. That's just how things work. But if you were to talk to someone about rahma, or al-adl, or al-latif, right, these attributes, beautiful qualities that ash-shukur or al-musawwar, the fashioner of shapes, all of a sudden it's a completely new frame of reference for someone. But as Muslims, we know exactly what we're talking about. It's the same thing. But for someone that has not encountered these kind of words, we have a great, I think, opportunity in our creative and entrepreneurial efforts to invite people to explore those concepts, those attributes. And I sometimes think that we need to, if you like, design the interface for people to experience that, like with your Rahma culture. Beautiful, right? That's exactly it. But maybe it's a comic, maybe it's a video game, maybe it's a lecture series, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a board game. Like, what are we creating that invite people to explore those Islamic concepts in a packaging that they're open to? Not just like, hey, come and sit in a lecture, I'm going to talk to you about things that you got to find. We've got to use our hikmah to find the right experience design, if you like, for people to explore Islam in their own pace.
Alhamdulillah, that's a really beautiful way to put it. I do definitely agree that there's so much baggage, especially in Australia. I saw a meme recently that said, never speaking about religion or politics, it meant that human beings don't have the skills to have a mature conversation about religion or politics anymore.
Right.
That's why a conversation about religion or politics can turn into an argument unless one or two people have got their sort of CPU turned up to maximum to control that conversation.
Right.
But not ever speaking about it means that baggage just stays there. And anytime somebody talks about religion, God, Bible, Jesus, that baggage, it comes up straight away. A lot of times, actually, in the Intro to Islam classes, we talk about concepts like rahmah, like forgiveness, like compassion, before we ever get into Islam. So we mention these things first, which are, there's nobody that's going to disagree with mercy and compassion and generosity. Everybody's going to be all for that. Yeah. And after we introduce the concepts, then we say, well, this is what Islam says about it, and it's more easily accepted in that case. But finding new and different ways to put the message out there, I think now's the time for it. And I spoke about film before with my previous guest. I know you had a chat with Lena Khan.
Yeah, that's right.
And I had a squiz at her movie, The Tiger Hunter, which she, I think, wrote, produced, and directed.
Yeah, that's right. And pitched to Disney hard, right? That was a great
and got the thumbs up to make it, and it's won a whole bunch of awards and accolades now, and she did very well with it. She's quite young, isn't she?
Yeah, she's one of, I think, this very inspiring emerging generation of creative Muslim leaders around the world, and alhamdulillah, it's happening in many different places. But yeah, she's someone that I really respect, for her journey. And in our interview, and inshallah, she'll be in my book that's coming out next year, inshallah.
Cool. Oh, what's the book?
The book is called The Heart of Design.
Okay.
Spirituality, creativity, and entrepreneurship.
That tells me definitely that it's a Peter Gould thing. Because if it doesn't have the word heart in it, then it's not you. Because you've got Heart-centered design, the heart of design.
Yeah.
You just start with the word heart, and you put some other words in it, and then that's...
But that's very intentional, because if you call something Islamic design, exactly what we just said, people bring a certain set of associations to it.
All these preconceptions come with it.
Correct. And sometimes that's useful, and we want to do that. But if I want a broader audience to maybe be interested in that book, or even consider it, because the ideas in this book are universal and timeless, and they come from an Islamic path to that heart-centered approach, but you've got to find the right language. So, for example, I make sure in my research, alhamdulillah, I've interviewed about 50 people for that. I have a range of people from different backgrounds, paths, some different faiths, no faith, and using this language of the heart of design is they're very open to it and actually quite love it. But if I was to come and say, like, I'm talking about Islamic design, we'll go to very specific, you're talking about calligraphy or tiling or mosque design. But anyway, that was a slight tangent. I can't remember. We were talking about Lena Khan and her films. And
but I want to know more about your book. But we'll talk about Lena Khan first.
So
being a Muslim filmmaker, obviously this particular film is not a Muslim film, but being a Muslim filmmaker, a person of color, female, and making headway in Disney Plus, because there's a lot of controversy around Disney right now, and the agenda that they're pushing, and a lot of people are sort of unsubscribing from Disney Plus and boycotting Disney and things like that. So for her to find success in that vein is really great. I hope she can continue to do the projects she wants, the way that she wants, wherever she goes, inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, we're in an interesting age, and a lot of active conversations playing out around the world, but having the right, I think, having the right sohbah and the right companionship and guidance, and create these creative communities. And one thing I've tried to help foster, just out of personal, intention, but more broadly, is facilitating what I call like-hearted communities. So these are usually, but not always, Muslim designers, creatives, professionals, entrepreneurs in different cities and pockets around the world. And alhamdulillah, we have quite a few of these groups now, and we do meetups, we do gatherings, we do retreat events now with the GMW, Global Muslim Location. So
such a cool idea.
It's cool. I mean, it's a timeless idea, but we're in an age where that's increasingly important, because you take someone like Lena, or I know one of her colleagues at Disney, she's very senior at Disney, and her coming to our GMW event in Istanbul was, she shared, was very helpful to get perspective, and I connected her with one of my teachers.
So for those who don't know, can you tell us what Global Muslim Workation is?
Yeah, that's it. So the word workation, it's a working vacation. Right. So the concept is, it's really, it's rooted in these different events and meetups that myself and a number of other kind of, like-hearted friends and communities have had for some time. But Launch Good, which is a great platform, and I'm good friends with the founder and the team. Yeah, Chris. They really put some more structure to it and said, let's actually organize these in a more formal way, once or twice a year. So the Global Muslim Workation is really the result of that. So we've been running these now, Istanbul, Bali, Bahamas, the next one in Qatar, inshallah, in Doha in November.
So a group of Muslims can go online, get a ticket, fly themselves there, and they're doing their own work while they're on a semi-vacation with all these great creative minds from around the world.
That's the concept, but we also have programming, so we bring in great creative leaders or thinkers. So in Qatar we have some good, like Peter Sanders, inshallah, is coming. He's one of my great teachers, a spiritual master as well, with 55 years of photography experience capturing the Muslim world. He's incredible story. So he's one of the people. So it's the idea, bring people together, being like masters and creative practitioners. But also if you just got to get on with work, like you do your work, but you're in the right environment.
You're hanging out with cool people.
And we're hoping to bring it to Australia next year.
Inshallah.
I'm gonna reach out to you. We need help.
Well, we got some great beaches literally across the road.
Yeah. And
so there's a lot you could do in Australia. It sounds like that. I can just see, half a dozen new entrepreneurial projects coming out of
Yes.
these amazing people hanging out with each other and meeting each other and stuff. I almost went to the last one,
Okay.
but the timing didn't quite line up with some other work commitments that I had. But our mutual friend AhmedBassalPodcast, he went.
Yeah.
And
right.
he said, hey, come with me. And I said, yep, I'm down. I jumped online to get my tickets, and the dates just didn't work out.
Yeah,
but
inshallah,
next time,
one.
inshallah.
Yeah, and it's a series. And the thing is, like, you don't even necessarily need to wait for a branded GMW experience.
Yeah.
You can organize this kind of like-hearted group of people anywhere. We have meetups here in the studio. We just getting people together, even if it's a small handful, but it's just that the essential nature of that sahba, that companionship, especially in the kind of era we're in, I find is so valuable.
Amazing, inshallah. So besides your book, what else is in the pipeline for you that you can talk about?
I can talk about everything. There's nothing too hidden. Look, I'm also exploring this project called Tales of Khayal. And this word khayal I discovered through a teacher is this idea of spiritual imagination. So khayal, if you say to different in different Muslim majority countries around the world, if you go to Indonesia, khayal means like daydreaming or like not paying attention in class.
Right.
If you go to an Urdu speaking person and talk about khayal, they'll think maybe of poetry or even a song, kind of musical genre called khayal. In most colloquial Arabic, it just means like imagination, right?
Right. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, that's it. But I kind of discovered through my teacher that's gone very deep with this and studied, Ibn Arabi and great scholars in this kind of metaphysical realm, is khayal is a deep concept of spiritual imagination. It's a little different to just visual imagination. So I got fascinated with this idea a few years ago, and I feel like I'm just really still scratching the surface, and it's something that. But I asked him to explain, well, what is khayal? Why is it different to just imagination?
Right.
And he explained using the hadith of Jibril, where he says, well, we're encouraged to worship God as if you see God, and know that if you don't, know that God sees you. And he says, let's look at that little passage, worship God as if you see God. But we're not encouraged to imagine God with a form. We're discouraged from that.
So we shouldn't visualize.
That's right. It's not the whole Simpsons angry old man, that's my image. That, which I think is important for us to understand when we're sharing about Islam as well. But so we use then our khayal, our spiritual imagination, which is from your heart. It's a different way, different kind of modality. And there's a whole sort of history and science around this tradition in Islamic design and art that I think is something I hope to kind of recover and restore and encourage people to unlock. If you're doing creative work or entrepreneurial work, khayal is this wonderful concept that you can really help bring a richness to your imaginative approach to what you're doing. So to help kind of unpack, well, how might we explore that idea in a way that people, it's not just like deep books and long lectures and
Right.
So I thought, let's create a comic series called Tales of Khayal. And I hope one day, and I've been making steps towards it being more animated series or even a video game. We have a prototype that we built. But it's this idea of different characters. It's set in the future, different Muslim characters, 50 to 100 years from different cities. So it might be Neo-Istanbul, set in like 75 years from now, and looking at what things from tradition are, firmly there. There might be cats everywhere and tea and so on. But what is our relationship with technology? What are the challenges that we see today emerging, of which there are many? And then also this realm of khayal is like, how do we have this kind of spiritual imagination? How might we recover that? So it's probably a topic for a whole other podcast.
It sounds super interesting. So rather than imagining what something looks like, but using Islamic and spiritual concepts to use this, as you call it, spiritual imagination to then connect more deeply with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, exactly. And so a simple way to imagine it is, okay, let's say you've read Lord of the Rings or you've read The Hobbit and you have this idea in your head of the characters, or you've read Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
Probably more timely example these days, right? And you have, if you read those before you look at the film, in the movies, you have this idea of what's Hogwarts look like, what do the things look like, and you have this whole delightful, kind of imagination going on. And sometimes it is visual, and other times it's just a feeling. What's it like in the, the Hogwarts place or so on. But as soon as you start seeing, the moment it's created for you in someone else's imagination,
it's kind of
films, it's very hard to see that. Now, in the same way, if you go into the Alhambra Palace or the Blue Mosque, you won't find images or photographs of people. You won't find sculptures and statues. But you find beautiful tiling, calligraphy, beautiful arches, beautiful lighting, spatial design that is masterfully tuned to your kind of for a spiritual experience. And you're kind of, if you like, invited with your khayal, using your heart to imagine and contemplate Allah, and imagine and be brought to a place of thoughtfulness, because you're not seeing the movie of like, this is,
so you're not having stimulus like shoved in your face, but it's kind of creating an atmosphere where your mind can
mind and your heart, you start having these feelings. There's a different frequency through which you are starting to now imagine and have this kind of feeling, and there's a different layer, and it's not just kind of spelled out for you. It's a little bit like poetry, as our friend Br Blue shares. It's not just about literally trying to tell a narrative and a story. It's to evoke a feeling. And that's your khayal as well.
Yeah.
It's something deeper, that if we're all kind of silent and we, Rumi says, close both eyes and see with your other eye. And he wrote that, 8 centuries ago. But it's still, I think, increasingly important in an age of digital distraction. How can we get to a place of design for remembrance rather than design for distraction?
Distraction is definitely the word for what's happening these days. Yeah. I was mentioning on one of the earlier episodes that we used to be told in sort of social media and marketing that you want to keep your videos to about 3 minutes.
Right.
Because people can't watch anything more than 3 minutes. And you got 5 seconds to catch their attention at the beginning, and you got 3 minutes total time. That shrank to 2 minutes. That shrank to 90 seconds, because reels are now 90 seconds. Yeah. Now we're being told that you got 3 seconds to grab their attention, and your video shouldn't be any longer than 45 seconds. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how far is this going to go? Like, next they're going to say you got 1 second to capture the attention, and your whole video should be 22 seconds, and that's where it's going. And you're eventually going to run out of time. So I love this idea of using different stimuli to have a spiritual experience rather than to just distract and waste time and have this empty sort of dopamine, which leads kind of to my sort of final question on this topic is AI is becoming a big thing now, especially in design. Yeah. Our logo for the AhmedBassalPodcast, we actually used AI to design that. So we went.
You're putting me out of a job, bro.
Yeah. Well, I still think all the really talented designers that I know, they have been the first early adopters of AI, and they've jumped on it before anybody else. And because they already have sort of the mindset to be able to use this new tool, in a way that someone like me wouldn't be able to use that. So with AI now coming into the picture and being able to create some incredible, and I've seen some of your experiments with AI as well, through all the different versions of it, of Midjourney. Where do you see things going sort of 10 years from now? So if it's 2033, people still need graphic design, people still need design in general. Yeah. How do you see that fitting in? And do you see that as something that's going to hinder creative process or help creative process?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And I think, thinking about, I was joking about the your logo, is, one of the anecdotes that's popular that I think there's some truth to it is that, you're not going to get replaced by AI, but you might be replaced by someone using AI, right? And so exactly what you said, I think it's this complementary nature. The creatives or people in any field, you might be an accountant or a lawyer, but you also might be in health sciences or a teacher. Embracing AI and being curious with it and being aware of how it can be used and helpful. I think people are starting to adopt that understanding, that this complementary way. Where does that go over the years ahead? I've seen some things that I think will be very disruptive in different kind of sectors. Definitely in design, it's already happened. So one of my good friends I chat with often, he's the chief design officer at Logitech, right? Global, and he does really cool guy. And when we both encountered Midjourney, like last, well, it was mid 2022 when it started becoming a bit more public, we were both like, bro, like it was like, you know, we're a similar age and we're
we need to look for another job.
Yeah, it was just extraordinary. And, you know, we experimented together and we worked on some things. And it's fascinating. And I've done I like to see what young people do, right? And I've given my own kids and some other community groups, you know, experiments to do and try and see how they might use the tools. I think fundamentally it's still, you know, it's in any kind of design, it's designed for people. And even deeper, if you go, well, people have a spiritual state, right? It's not just thinking of people as customers or, you know, an audience, or I need to grow and need to have design for more people. It's being aware that, you know, what is the, you know, it's a big amana what you might be creating and affecting someone's hal, right? That's a big responsibility. So it's knowing and understanding the tools that it's how and why you use them, right? It's coming back to your intentionality, where things are going. I'm a believer in like being creatively curious and explore, embrace. I've always been personally advocate for, you know, go and explore. Go and try the tools, see what's happening, and I think that's important. As Muslim communities, we do that, but we have this kind of openness to what the technology might be doing, but that doesn't mean it was like, oh great, well I don't need my imam anymore because I've got, you know, Sheikh GPT, whatever. I think, you know, hopefully no one's jumping to that, but my point there is like, but there's plenty of people that will go immediately onto ChatGPT and ask them, hey, is it halal if I do this? Or
100%.
So regardless of what we want to say or do and kind of, you know, kind of pontificate about, is like how AI should be used or not used, it's being used, right?
Yeah. Well, we used to joke about Sheikh Google.
Yeah.
And now it's Sheikh GPT.
Totally.
Yeah.
And there's a good episode with one of our friends, Walid Kudus, right, on One Path, where he's talking about AI. And he's someone who's been in AI for a long time, you know, 25, 30 years almost. And he talks about, specifically for Muslims, how we might think about AI. But in the end, we're kind of aligned. He's like, yes, be cautiously and creatively curious, use the technology. But then, for me, it comes back to how might we use this to invite people to the timeless wisdoms that we still need as humans.
100%. Thank you so much, Peter. I want to give you an opportunity because I know some of the people that watch the show are not Muslim. So if you have any advice to them, being a white guy from Sydney who's been Muslim 20 years, if you want to look at the red camera there and give them any advice about Islam, feel free.
Yeah, all right. Well, you know, I think, you know, I often refer to Rumi for different kind of advice. And, you know, Rumi is someone that is a teacher from 8 centuries ago, but has impacted millions of lives and is the most popular selling poet in the United States. But he's Muslim. He was a jurist, a great theologian and scholar, but also well known for his spiritual guidance that comes through his beautiful poetry and his books like the Mathnavi, which is a great masterwork of poetry. And in one of his wisdoms, he shares there are as many paths to God as there are people on earth or souls on earth. And I'm paraphrasing it from the original Farsi, which I don't know. It's probably much more meaningful and you know, more beautifully said. But for me, that was my own experience. Is like everyone kind of has their own path that leads to God, and this long journey that we kind of have back to God. So I would just encourage people to be curious and be open, and you know, spend time with people that you see how their hearts are affected by this beautiful tradition, and ask them questions, ask them hard questions as well. I think spending time with different Islamic scholars, there's never been questions that I've been told like, don't ask that question, right? There's always there's a confidence, there's a certainty, even if they don't know the answer. Ultimately, there's wisdoms that I've found in our Islamic teachings that it's very universal and timeless. So, it's a long way of just saying like, Bismillah, explore, ask questions. And I think just having that curiosity. And if even that feels like it might be, too difficult or not something I'm interested in, I would just say think about gratitude and being grateful for what we have. When I think about prayer and why are Muslims praying all the time, it's like, how do you have time for 5 times a day? Well, it's one way to think of that, and how I share with my kids, is being grateful. So just taking time each day, just a short amount of time, to just be grateful, acknowledge, pause, take a break from our hyper-digital life, and just being taking a moment of presence and being grateful for your health. You have this time, this moment. Maybe it's good Wi-Fi, good coffee, whatever it is. And I think over time, that gratitude, we start to, I certainly did, you start to recognize that, that's not by accident, that these things, you've been given these blessings. It's by design for you. And for me, that means, coming back and recognizing the source of those blessings, which is God. So that would be what I'd share.
Thank you so much, Peter. I knew you were going to say the word heart in there, and you did. It's been such a pleasure coming and having a chat to you, and thanks for hosting us at your beautiful studio as well.
Anytime. Thank you.
Inshallah, we'll see you again soon.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. And for everyone watching at home, don't forget to like and subscribe, turn your notifications on so you know when we release the next episode of the Ahmed Bassal podcast. See you next time. Assalamu alaikum. That's it.
All right. We're good, bro.
Jazakallah khair, man.